You've probably never thought to yourself, why do motorcycle categories even exist? It's likely not one of those things that you've pondered as you lay your back in a field and stare up at the night sky, questioning the meaning of human existence. It just kind of makes sense, right? Manufacturers make specific bikes for specific types of riders, but it hasn't always been that way. In the not-so-distant past, there weren't these hyper-specific niches, the adventure bikes, sport touring bikes, parallel twin sport bikes, V4 superbikes, so how did we get here? These categories didn't just fall from the sky, bestowed upon us from heaven. It wasn't as if Soichiro Honda just sat there with a sacred tablet that foresaw exactly what types of bikes should be made for the next 60 years. And while racing certainly had a lot to do with the organization of sport bikes specifically, it doesn't tell the whole story. The truth is simultaneously simpler and more interesting. We invented them. You, me, us, our forefathers, riders of every ilk that led to the inception of many of the motorcycle categories that don showroom floors today. The dealer in Idaho who modified Super Cubs, OG street squid stunt riding the earliest Streetfighters, and the crusty chopper dudes that made Harley-Davidson part of the American counterculture. So today, we're going to run through the history of some of the most prevalent motorcycle categories and discuss where they came from and why it all matters. The story of the Honda Trail is a picture-perfect representation of the idea we're talking about today. Back in the 60s, Honda had an adorable little bike named the Super Cub. Maybe you've heard of it. They only sold, I don't know, like 110 million of these things over the last 60 years. The Super Cub is this classic piece of Honda history. Step-through frame, a petite little single cylinder, remarkable fuel efficiency, and ease of use. It's Honda doing what Honda does best. It's the bike that put half of Southeast Asia on two wheels. But out in Idaho, the landscape is a little different than the dense streets of Vietnam. Hunters and outdoorsmen wanted something with the functionality and ease of a Super Cub, but with a little bit of off-road chop, because, spoiler alert, the Super Cub wasn't exactly primed for the rugged landscape of the Northwest. So, Honda dealer Herb Uhi began modifying these 50cc Hondas to excel where a stock Super Cub just simply couldn't. He installed bigger knobby tires and modified the gearing and exhaust for superior trail usability. These modified Super Cubs became so popular that American Honda caught wind. A small dealer in Boise, which at the time had less than 50,000 residents, was selling more Super Cubs than the entire greater Los Angeles area. Jack McCormack, the head of American Honda at the time, sent one of these modified bikes back to Japan, and the rest is history. In 1961, Honda began selling the Trail 50 right from the factory, and even today you can still buy a Trail 125. This story is significant because it is an early example of how it's riders that create the bikes they want to see in the world and manufacturers that follow suit. Let's talk about Streetfighters next. The term Street Fighter doesn't just refer to one of the highest grossing video game franchises of all time, nor does it solely represent one of Ducati's flagship machines. Back in the 80s and 90s, sport bikes were all the rage, and crashing them seemed to be part of the rage as well. But as anyone who's crashed a sport bike knows, replacing your fairings is expensive. Even before the days of the internet, it was likely even more costly and time-consuming than it is now. So instead, riders would just pull off any remaining plastics, add a set of upright handlebars, and now you've got a naked, aggressive, stripped-down street bike that would become known as a Street Fighter. Other times, a crashed sport bike with a serviceable engine and chassis would be totaled out after an insurance claim and end up in a salvage yard. From there, backyard builders could purchase them, remove what was broken or unnecessary, and sell them locally as Street Fighters. At first, these were just Frankenstein bikes built from the wreckages of crashed machines. But the style caught on. Riders liked how mean they looked, how raw and unapologetic they were, and how comfortable they rode compared to a bike with clip-ons. The style grew in popularity in Europe originally before taking off worldwide. Naturally, manufacturers caught on and began selling street fighter motorcycles from the factory, with early examples from the 90s being the Triumph Speed Triple or the Honda X11. Fast forward to today, and the mainstream hyper-naked bike all harken back to early Street Fighter motorcycles. The Yamaha MT-10, Aprilia 200 V4, and Ducati Street Fighter, of course, all use race bike-derived engines and chassis components with just more upright ergonomics and reduced bodywork. They just didn't have to be wrecked by a 22-year-old first to get to that point. Another early example can be found in the core years of American motorcycling, the early 1970s. Harley-Davidsons were the prime subject for chopper motorcycle builds. Builders were cutting up their frames, deleting rear suspension, and turning these plain Jane stock hogs into rolling pieces of Americana. Harley has always embedded itself in American culture. The two go together like peanut butter and jelly. But these grassroots chopper builders brought HD into the counterculture as well, with films like Easy Rider contributing to the movement, with it becoming wildly popular for Harley owners to chop their bikes. The motor company just couldn't ignore that. Of course, it is near impossible to sell an authentic chopper from the factory with all of the modifications made that compromise, suspension, braking, and handling. Kind of important. I can actually see the class action lawsuit now. Was your coccyx shattered while operating a Harley-Davidson hardtail Freedom Hog? You may be entitled to financial compensation. So instead, Harley had to get creative, and in 1984, they dropped the FXST Softail. The Softail was a bit of a genius move. It looked the part of a hardtail chopper, but it wasn't even close. Hidden within the chassis was a single rear shock, so you got that slammed, sleek styling that all the chopper guys are into, while maintaining some semblance of rideability. I mean, they were still 1980s Harleys after all. It can only be so nice to ride. They said, "You guys want choppers, so we'll make one that you can actually ride," and the category stuck. Chopper culture directly influenced not just the Softail line, but much of the way the brand styled all of their motorcycles. Low rear ends, high handlebars, lots of chrome, high-end paint scheme, the outlaw bad boy biker thing. You can see the impact of this decision still to this day, with the Softail line remaining a cornerstone of Harley's lineup. Alright boys, it's time in the video where we must pause for a brief word from our sponsor, NordVPN. We recently partnered with NordVPN, and I've been using it on my PC, and they've got some new features you might not know about. So picture this. You take your beloved Ducati over to the local cafe to take in a fine espresso, or maybe you're streaming in a hotel room while you're on a cross-country motorcycle trip. In either scenario, you're using your personal devices on, let's say, less than secure Wi-Fi. You don't know who might be eavesdropping. That's where NordVPN comes in. One tap, you connect, and like magic, your traffic is encrypted, your IP is hidden, and your data is secure. Also, NordVPN's got this new Threat Protection Pro feature that blocks out phishing sites, fake shops, malware, and all other kinds of scams. So even if you fall for that sketchy link, Nord's Threat Protection will stop you from accessing it. NordVPN also provides dark web monitoring that constantly scans for leaks and alerts if any of your info shows up in a breach. If you want to try it for yourself, go to nordvpn.com/yammynoob. By using my link, you'll get an extra 4 months with a 2-year plan. NordVPN is a risk-free thing with a 30-day money-back guarantee. I'll drop the link in the description, pin a comment, and even flash it on here so you don't lose it. Keep enjoying all the wonders the internet has to offer without any sketchy surprises. Thanks to Nord for the support on today's video. Now let's get back to it. Scramblers and cafe racers are two of the most romanticized motorcycle genres of the modern era. 10 years ago, you couldn't throw a stick without hitting some flannel-clad barista on a Triumph Bonneville, and even today, Royal Enfield still proudly carries the torch for retro-styled bikes, selling nearly 1 million every year. Scramblers started in the 50s and 60s when riders took regular British roadsters and modified them to handle off-road races known as hare scrambles. They would throw on some knobby tires, raise the exhaust, delete unnecessary components to save weight, and likely knowing said parts will be broken after the many crashes that would ensue when you try to scramble with a 500-pound 60s Roadster. And today, Ducati, Triumph, Royal Enfield, they all sell some sort of Scrambler in their lineup. They're simple, retro-style bikes with varying degrees of off-road chops. While being a super prevalent style for the last 15 years or so, the Scrambler is a spiritual descendant of garage-built off-road bikes. And in a way, when you think about it, dirt bikes really were just ultimate culmination of those original Scramblers too. Cafe racers have a similar origin story, but instead of trying to race off-road, these were post-war squids in search of speed. It's nice to know that some things just don't change. So they'd take those classic roadsters from Triumph, BSA, or Norton's, strip them down, shed excess weight, tune up the engines, and put on low handlebars so they could go from one cafe to the other faster than their mates. These cafe bikes were really the first attempt from civilian riders to make a sport bike. Now, 60-odd years later, it seems every manufacturer has leaned into the style at some point. It's proven design language. The Continental GT, the Triumph Thruxton, even Yamaha's XSR offers a nod to the style. Again, riders invented this category and manufacturers just decided to make it official. Adventure bikes are one of the hottest categories today, especially for Asian fellows who want to summon the adventurous spirit as they ride 55 miles per hour on a Strode 5 miles down the road to meet their buddies at a bike night held at the Rustic Antler and Artisan Barrel Collective Tap Room. But ADV bikes really stem from hardcore rally racing. In the 80s, events like the Paris-Dakar Rally pushed bikes through thousands of miles of desert riding. Manufacturer-sponsored teams wanted a bike that blended the high-speed, long-distance usability of a street bike and the long travel suspension and off-road ruggedness that a dirt bike offers. So BMW struck gold with the R80 GS in 1980, practically making the first mass-marketed adventure bike, but Honda actually won 4 rallies in a row with their NXR 800V prototype, which would serve as the foundation of the Africa Twin. And as did Yamaha with the XTR 850R, a predecessor for all future Tenere models. While originally built for rally dominance, this framework would hit the mainstream by the early 2000s thanks to the Long Way Round series. I don't really know why it took so long. Is it that crazy to want a motorcycle that can traverse the African continent and go to the grocery store? I mean, kind of feels like the design briefs would probably overlap quite a bit. Today, ADV bikes are everywhere. The BMW GS, KTM adventure models, Tuaregs, Teneres, Transalps, I guess they all start with T for some reason. They're loved because they seemingly can do it all. It is interesting that a style of motorcycle that is so universally popular now started as such a niche riding endeavor, not deliberately strategized as a corporate boardroom decision. Before categories got complicated and all bikes became very specialized and niche, a bike was just a bike. There were British roadsters from the 50s and 60s, then UJM bikes from the Big Four in the 70s and 80s. Triumph Bonnevilles, Honda CBs, Kawasaki KZs, they were all built to be versatile and appeal to anyone. They weren't really cruisers, they weren't really adventure bikes, they were just motorcycles. Even racing was done on these standard style bikes. They would just slap a big bubble fairing on a CB750 and then boom, it's a race bike. Not only were these bikes all similar in their purpose, many were damn near identical. I'm sure you could practically swap certain parts from any UJM bike from one manufacturer to another without encountering too many issues. Amidst all these wildly specific motorcycle categories, there is still a semblance of a standard motorcycle today too. In our view, it's the MT-07, GSX-8S, CB750 Hornet. It's the universal Japanese, still exists. It just looks quite a bit different than it did 60 years ago. I mean, there's a lot to be said about the parallel twin becoming the standard motorcycle engine and just cross-platformed across different needs. But here's the thing, categories are useful. They allow prospective buyers to court a bike for a specific riding style, and the competition within a category holds other manufacturers accountable. But simultaneously, it's the bikes that deviate from these categories that keep the sport exciting. Take Ducati for instance. While most of the Japanese were running inline fours forever, Ducati doubled down on their V-twin and later V4 motorcycles. Desmo valves, early trellis frame designs, they constantly did things differently, and that's why they've got a cult following. It's why their bikes are really unrivaled when it comes to that distinct character. Even Yamaha has been consistently on the cutting edge for the last 10 years, with many industry firsts. They made the parallel twin engine cool with the 270-degree CP2 found in the MT-07. A cool parallel twin is something that seemed impossible prior to then. And now that compact, versatile, fun parallel twin is all the rage and used all across the board. They've also been the only Japanese manufacturer to invest in a 3-cylinder engine, which has since paid dividends thanks to the MT-09. Breaking categories creates innovation, and innovation eventually becomes the new standard. So, why do motorcycle categories exist? Well, it's because riders created them through their own customizations. Streetfighters, choppers, scramblers, adventure bikes, it all came from people wanting to do something with bikes that hadn't really been done before. Every category you know of today started because riders chopped, crashed, and rebuilt bikes until manufacturers had no choice but to follow suit. What's gonna happen next? Factory Turbo Hayabusa? I mean, it's so obvious. Come on, Suzuki! Alright boys, thanks for making it to the end of the video all the way today. I appreciate it, and as always, I'll catch you in the next one. See you later.